The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. Today I have Leo Prozument and Mindi Newman here from Restoration One. They are a water, fire, mold mitigation company. They also work with crime scene cleanup. Leo, Mindi, thank you for joining me today.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you for having us.
I always like to ask, what is your origin story? How did you get involved in this business in disaster restoration?
It actually came to me by accident. Our house was flooded twice, and we, to say the least, were treated unfairly both times during the mitigation process, which led me to believe that there had to be better companies doing this. When COVID came around, a lot of people shifted their career path and also looked at other options for their careers. This was the time that we chose to jump into our own restoration business because I felt that that was a necessity type of business which provided emergency relief to people in need. We are an ambulance without the sirens. We are on scene at the same time as really 911 services. So we focus on providing help as soon as possible.
Mindi, what is your origin story?
I was recruited. I was a specialist in drain care and I did janitorial services, and somebody I met asked me to come in. I really loved how I could help people. I am not a certified restoration. I am certifiable. No, I'm kidding. But I literally am there to make the connections, and I love to help people. I have a lot of empathy. So in my role, I'm able to take someone who has probably ran into a disaster and make it a little more easy. Well, it's never easy, but a little more durable to get through it. I'll be there. I call them. I make sure they're being taken care of. I know Leo and our team are amazing. Knowing someone's there for them is such a big change of how things go.
Mindi, can you tell everyone about your nickname and how that came about?
They call me the Queen of Clean. Everyone said you're everywhere and you're just the Queen of Clean, and I stuck with it. And I think it's a great branding. It sticks, and people remind me as the Queen. So if they can't remember anything, they say the Queen, and I love it.
Back in the day when I worked for a fire department, they created a role for me called Occupant Services Liaison. And what I would do is, following a structure fire in a home, I would liaise with the insurance company and make sure that they had all the reports and all the investigations were given to them. So I have a little bit of information. And growing up, I grew up in Skokie, where if you spit on the ground outside, my basement would flood. We found out later that there was an underground river about a block away from us, and the additional construction and building pushed water into people's basements. So I grew up with a wet vac in my hand.
We should have opened up our location where you grew up.
I hated it. I hated cleaning, and it was all clean. It wasn't sewage. It was seepage. But it was anytime it rained outside or snow melted, we would get flooding. We had some broken drain tiles. We hired a company who replaced them, but never connected it to our sump pump. So we continued to flood. And at the time, my mom was a widow. They completely took advantage of her, and they did work. They certainly dug a trench and they put stuff in. We had to have them come back to jackhammer up our floor to make a connection to the sump pump. So I digress. Can you tell everyone, both of you, what services you offer? Before you answer that, I have to say that you guys are really unsung heroes. Hero doesn't necessarily mean bust in the door and put out the fire. A hero is someone who helps someone else. And you're there, for some of it during the incident, but really after the incident when everything starts to sink in. So what Mindi was doing about talking about comforting people was very, very important. I learned in a medical class that that's one of the most important things you can do to someone who's injured is to comfort them. An injury doesn't have to necessarily be physical. It could be psychological. You just ruined your home. You need someone to talk to. Back to the question, can you tell us about some of the services that you offer?
So we consider ourselves a one-stop shop in our industry. And what that means is we offer a service that caters towards disasters as well as a restoration service. So basically what we do is from top to bottom, we provide full-on project management of any property, whether it's commercial or residential, to help them mitigate the initial damage they incurred, and then remodel or rebuild everything according to the original state.
Do you have people on staff for the construction part, rebuilding?
We have two teams or two organizations within our company, which is construction as well as mitigation.
Excellent. Can you talk about not identifying anyone, but can you talk about hoarding and why hoarding is really unsafe and unhealthy?
I went to some classes, and hoarding is really a medical condition that usually will start in your 50s, and it's definitely a sickness. People have the littlest items that they just can't let go of. Like a knife for you, a plastic knife, you're going to throw it into the garbage. They can't. So the house starts building. They might be hoarding from Walmart, Target, any kind of stores, or they're going to garage sales. And the house starts getting fuller and fuller and fuller where they cannot get to their bathtub. They cannot get to their kitchen. Legally, and I think you would know this, if a fireman or policeman cannot enter and get out in a safe path, they're not supposed to enter, but they're not going to not go in. So what you walk in and you see these clothing and just thing with feces and food and urine, it's something that we have to take care of, and it has to be done very slowly with the person. And what would usually probably take an hour could take 10 to 12 days. So I had one, it was out of pocket $30,000, and we put the house back together, but you know exactly what happened a few months later. So you can only do as much as you can do. And I know Leo and our team work so hard because it could be a dangerous situation.
How do you interact with community mental health, or do you even interact with community mental health when you get a case like that?
It all depends on the severity of the situation. It depends what type of people we encounter. And also, it's very important to understand, a lot of these people, they're dependent on their family members. And the family members, when they try to make decisions, they usually don't go the route of, let's resolve this mental health issue. It's more of, what can you guys do to get this mess out of my house or out of my mom's or my dad's house? Usually that's what we encounter. So a lot of times, unfortunately, where the situation calls for a mental health analysis, we really are not empowered to do anything about that because we can't, due to liability, make any recommendations.
Can you tell everyone about crime scene cleanup? This is just interesting to me.
That's a very, very serious category, meaning that you have to be extremely empathetic to the situation that you're in, as well as you have to be very, very, I guess you have to have a strong stomach, and you have to have a lot of confidence in what you say and what you do during a situation. So the crime scene is something that we focus on. We treat it as part of our mitigation process, absolutely. But we also work in conjunction with police or fire departments that allow us to work with the property or the individuals in that property according to all the legal aspects of it. And we want to make sure that everything is done according to how the family wants it to be done, what needs to be saved, what needs to be thrown out, etc. So it's a very, very step-by-step type of process that you have to follow.
And unfortunately, very gruesome at times.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen some of that, and you do have to have a strong stomach, not only for visual, but there's olfactory, there's odor issues, there's just thinking about the family, and there's stomach issues as well. So
right, and also PTSD is very big in the crime scene industry. Really is. A lot of people get burned out. Not a lot of people know about this.
I had no idea.
Right, a lot of employees just simply cannot handle it, and they leave the industry and then go do something else because one case that they encounter that is completely traumatic to them is going to change their life forever. So.
And I know someone who was in the crime scene, that's all they did, and they brought their family members into it, and they didn't stick with it because, what you said, Leo, it was very hard on them psychologically.
Let's uplift it. Let's pivot.
Do it. Let's get to the fires.
Let's talk about fires. That's not what I was going to ask, but let's go to fires. Tell us about fire mitigation. Well, before you do, I will tell you, working for a fire department, nobody realizes this. But if somebody does have a fire in their house, the smoke destroys everything, and their basement floods because that's where all the water goes. And people are just, oh my God, I have 2 feet of water in my basement. Yeah, where do you think the water went? So Leo, talk to us about fires and mitigation and what you can do for fires and smoke.
Right. So the fires, the biggest issue is you have to be on the scene right after the department calls you, within 60 minutes or so. And it's extremely important that you are with a customer and you explain to them the process of what would happen. For example, your house will be boarded up. Then we will start the cleanup process. We'll start the mitigation. We'll start the content removal or disposal or cleanup. And then we'll talk about the rebuild and the management of the insurance claim itself, which is a process that is very thorough, and you need to be extremely detail-oriented working with the large loss adjusters, which we are specialists in.
One thing that you want to make sure you do is not be a fire chaser. That's something we pride ourselves on. We do not go knock on the door when you have a fire. I like to give this advice, and I hope if anyone's listening, God forbid you have a fire, do not sign any contracts for about 48 hours. Have coffee with a couple people that you feel you can trust. After you have that coffee, then you can make the right decision. When someone knocks on your door and you've just lost maybe everything, you're not thinking properly. So take that advice, have a cup of coffee, take a walk with somebody, but don't sign any papers for at least 48 hours. Nothing's going to change in those 48 hours. So take the time to think.
That dovetails into a book that I wrote called The Opposite of Safe. And the premise of the book is that when we are in an emotional state of mind, we don't make very good decisions. And the book goes on and explains that. This is exactly the same thing. It's probably one of the worst moments of someone's life. All their property has been destroyed and maybe nobody got hurt, which is a good thing. But you're still in an emotional state, and that is fantastic advice.
And it's extremely important for a company like ours to keep it together as well, because you tend to get emotional yourself. So if you don't get yourself down to a level where you're completely neutral, yet empathetic, and you are confident about the whole process, it plays to the customer's advantages, because usually what they do is they relax and they take a deep breath and they follow the lead, which is extremely important because they're lost. So they need a leader during the situation, which we come to be.
Leo and Mindi, how do you guys get past the psychological trauma of seeing people in dire situations? What's your secret of remaining impartial, remaining calm?
3 shots of vodka and a...
Very good.
Nah. The job is definitely not easy. I can tell you that. From the owner's perspective, and also I can speak for our employees, it's a very difficult job in a sense where you're constantly trying to help the customer, even if the situation is sort of relieved and now you're in the process of mitigation and you are in the process of rebuilding a property. You're still constantly in touch with the customer and you're still constantly managing the situation, because it's always nerve-wracking and it's never going to be over until the project is actually completed. And that's what we face. So how do we deal with difficult situations? Because there are many of them. We have a lot of difficult customers that for one reason or the other love to complain or just find something that is not to their satisfaction. So we deal with that a lot of times. And we have to be, again, I go back to the neutrality of it. The situation has to be completely taken from a point of view when you step back and you assess everything, make professional recommendations to the customers so they understand that you're not having any type of bias when you provide their solutions or provide solutions for them. You're speaking from the professional industry knowledge and you're making professional recommendations to relieve their situation.
So how does someone find you guys?
We're everywhere. Just yell Restoration 1 and Mindi or I will answer.
Of Waukegan. Restoration 1 of Waukegan.
Right. Nevertheless, we're answer the call to anybody that refers us to anybody that is interested in using our services. You can find us. We're all over social media, Restoration 1 of Waukegan. You can find our Google page where you will find tons of reviews, all 5-star reviews. You'll find that the overall response is extremely positive.
The website for Restoration 1 Waukegan is restoration, RESTORATION, the number 1.com. That's how you can access their information. We just talked about exciting structure fires. What about pets?
I put together a presentation that I think is really important. Let's say we all live on Street A and there's just a massive polar vortex, which means everyone's pipes just blew. So there's 20 houses. And out of those 20 houses, 15 of you have a dog, a cat, a parrot, a cow, whatever you want to have. And what you want to do before any of this happens is have some kind of plan. Find out any hotel that will allow your pet, because not all hotels will take pets. If your house is flooded or had any damage and you have nowhere to put that pet, you're in kind of a pickle. So make sure you do that. The second thing you want to do is make sure you have a backpack with food. You want to make sure you know who their doctor is, their veterinarian, their medications. Don't leave the dog or any kind of animal in the home if you know that something isn't right in your home. Take that animal with you. It's just the same that you would do with a human being. You want to make sure they are safe and taken care of.
Excellent. Leo, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think we have to always be aware that pets are part of a family. They're kids, they're our family members. And a lot of times, actually, our customers love their pets more than their family members. So,
like Leo.
Exactly. Dogs, cats, any type of pets are extremely important in all types of situations, especially if there's a fire damage, smoke damage, or any type of mold or bacteria issues. It's just like kids or elderly. You want to make sure that the kids are as safe as possible as well.
So if you'd like to contact me, you can call Mindi at 847-414-3371. I will answer any of your questions. Again, that's Mindi at 847-414-3371. If I am not available, please call Leo at
847-778-4647.
Can you tell our listeners what's the worst condition situation you've ever seen?
Just recently, it had to do with a fire. A gentleman decided to take a candle. Do not leave your candles unattended. And he lit it with a piece of tissue paper and left the room. Well, we know a piece of tissue paper can easily just kind of blow. And it did, and his house caught on fire. Not only did his house catch on fire, we found out he was an extreme hoarder. So right now we're working through this, and I've never seen anything like this. I think you'll agree with me. And it's taking quite a long time. I visit this person once a week and have a coffee because they have nobody. And it's brought a friendship and I trust, and we're working slowly to get it all right. But please, my number one thing from this is do not light a candle and leave the room or leave your house, ever.
If I can make one recommendation, which is pretty simple to follow, is always check your sump pump. Because most of the damage that happens to properties is due to a sump pump failure of some sort. So if you don't know exactly what to look for, make sure you have a plumber that can come in once a year and just to take a look at your basement and make sure that everything is set up properly and it's working and it's functioning. So that's my only recommendation. If you're going to leave with anything today, is remember, it's once in a while, if you do have a basement, you have a sump pump, double check it.
With that said, what's a plumber going to cost you? $300? What is a basement remediation for a flood going to cost?
On the average, about $3,500.
Okay, so you're talking like 1% of the potential cost. It's money well spent.
Very well said.
Do you ever turn down any clients?
Yes, we actually do. We turn down clients that we've had difficult situations or experiences in the past.
Oh, so repeat clients.
Repeat clients, yes, but those are very far between. Maybe I can count one or two on my fingers. Usually, you don't turn anyone down. Let me put it this way: if there's an emergency situation, we will take the call. It doesn't matter to us. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the client respects us, respects our employees, respects our business. At the end of the day, it's a human interaction. So if that interaction does not work, everything that happens afterwards is going to be a nightmare, which we obviously try to avoid and run away from.
We all work as a team, and every review that comes out is for a team. It might have someone's name, but it's a team effort, and I think we work really well as a team. We have 150 five-star reviews, and to me, that's heartwarming.
That's fantastic. How many employees are there?
We have 8 employees.
Okay.
Marcus, are you looking for a part-time job?
No.
Okay.
I have a part-time job and a full-time job.
Just thought I'd ask.
Leo, can you talk about any certifications that your employees or company has?
The certifications that are a requirement in the industry are water damage certifications, which are done by an industry called IICRC. And within that industry, there are all types of services and educational tools that they provide. Obviously, water damage is the number one cause for property damage. They also offer mold, fire restoration, odor mitigation, carpet cleaning, and other type of like biohazard cleanups. Other services, I would say those are probably the most popular ones that are within the industry, I guess, are used much more than anything else. So
Okay.
You want to make sure your project manager has as many certifications as possible. And I think we do have one that is
well,
very
it's
certified.
extremely. You have to understand. It's there is a science to it. It just doesn't come to anyone right away naturally. You have to have experience. You have to understand what you're doing in all types of jobs that require mitigation. So you have to be knowledgeable and trained accordingly.
One of the things that strikes fear into the hearts of people is the word mold. And I say that in jest, but it's true. Some people don't realize that if they do have a structure fire in their home and there's all this water in their basement, there is definitely the possibility, and it's probably more than a possibility, maybe not quite a certainty, but there are mold issues. Can you talk to us about mold safety, when to mitigate, when to remediate?
Usually mold happens either in basements or in the attics. And probably more often than not, they happen in the attics, because usually when mold happens in the basement, it's due to the fact that it was not cleaned up properly when it was experienced, or they had water or a flood or any type of sub pump failure, leakage in the basement area that was not cleaned up properly. That's where mold originates, in the basement. In the attic, it's another situation. It depends all on the way the roof is set up, the way the ventilation is set up, what type of insulation you have. So I go back to the same recommendation as far as checking your sump pump. You do want to go up in the attic once in a while and have a professional, let's say a roofer or an insulation company, just to come in there and double check if everything is okay, if nothing is either wet or moist or doesn't look like it's properly ventilated. You do want to make sure that you do double check that.
Mold grows fast, spreads.
Have you ever had a snowbird whose pipes froze and came back and their entire home was ruined?
It happens all the time.
What can a snowbird do to prevent that from happening?
You have to have somebody come into the house and just double check that everything is working properly.
I'm going to tell you a story if you don't mind.
Sure.
We had a snowbird, and the daughter was supposed to check on the house once a week, but she decided it wasn't that important. And one time she went in, didn't look at the heat. Of course, you want to leave your heat at a special number. I don't want to say what the number is because everyone says different, but you want to make sure your heat's on when you leave for the winter. And if you don't go look in the basement, you don't know what's going on. So this person really let it go. And we went in, and I'm telling you, that basement was there was no heat. It was just mold. And it was not a good case, and it was not a good experience. But we were able to save their contents. We were able to get the mold, but it wasn't very safe at first. And you guys worked really hard, and I thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I also must add that it's very important when you mitigate for mold, if there are customers that want to have a guarantee. Let's say restoration one came in, took care of my mold. I don't have mold anymore, but how do I know if I have it? Well, I'm going to hold you responsible if it comes up like a year later. So the way that we encounter that problem is we always recommend, if you are not satisfied or if you are concerned that this may return, call a microbiologist and get it tested. Get it professionally tested, where they send out samples to the lab, where they take surface tests throughout your house, and that way you will know for sure, where you get 100% solution, where you understand that whether or not you do have mold.
It's probably the best money you'll spend.
In another interview, I actually spoke with Yale Wolk about home inspections, and he's part of the same networking group. And he mentioned that a lot of times mold is a result of improper ventilation, meaning the bathroom fans are not vented to the outside, they're vented to the attic, and then all this moist air is going up there. So I'm sure the homeowners would need to understand that they might have to reconfigure something in their attic space so that it's properly ventilated. I would hate to have you come in for water damage, mitigate it, and then all of a sudden there's mold, but it's not because it came back, it's because it's a different source.
Correct.
What final thoughts can you share about health and safety following a major incident? What's your advice to our listeners?
My advice is don't do it yourself. If you have a massive water damage, let's say in a basement, again, I use basements as an example because usually that's the area where most water damage happens. Usually what you need to do is you always have to call a professional company like ours. You don't do it yourself. You don't put the towels on the floor or use a shop vac to suck the water out of the carpet. That will not work. That will not take care of the problem. What it will do, though, this is where I can 100% guarantee that if you do the cleanup yourself, you are going to get mold.
And my biggest thing is if you can and you know where your power is, turn it off. You don't want to go downstairs when there's power because you don't know what it's hitting and you don't, God forbid, want to be electrocuted. So make sure you know where your power is and do not go down there and use a trained professional like Leo said. It's a very important thing to remember.
I do know from my days at firefighting, one of the first things the fire department does when they pull up to a house is turn the power off because they could get electrocuted back through the water stream. It's very, very important. People should also know where their gas shutoff is in case of an emergency.
And a water shutoff, too.
And water shutoff, too. I think I have a little homework to do. I'm going to find my water shutoff because I'm not. I think I know where it is. But I'll double check it just so I know.
It's facing the street. So
okay. Oh, I know exactly where it is. I wasn't thinking of it. And I'm a human being. People don't think about these things. They don't think about, where's your gas shut off? When would you need to shut off your gas? Well, if there's an area, leak somewhere, you might have to turn it off. Same thing if you're having flooding issues, you have to turn your water off. Thank you both for taking the time with me today.
We cannot thank you enough, Marcus, for your time, your patience, and we were really excited to be on your show. Can't wait to hear it.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having us, and thank you for hosting us.
Grab a piece of paper or open up your notes on your mobile device. I'm going to reiterate the contact information. Restoration One of Waukegan's website is restoration1.com. Mindi can be reached at 847-414-3371, and Leo can be reached at 847-778-4647. Some of the other things that we mentioned in the broadcast are my book is available at theoppositeofsafe.com. My website is firearmmentor.com. I run monthly concealed carry classes, and if you have any questions or would like to get a hold of me, my contact information is listed at firearmmentorcard.com. Stay safe out there, and pretty soon I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick with Firearm Mentor, signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.